We are preparing to stream live onto YouTube. We are actually now live.
Should be a microphone or something else down there. Yeah, I just joined sound somewhere. We really? No, it's I'll just reduce that one. I've only got him. And if I get rid of him, then I've got those. No, I'm not. I'm unmuted. Oh, yeah? I'm unmuted. You know.
Okay, Therese, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, John.
Right. So, are you there, Tim?
Yeah, I'm here, John. Yes.
Where's Ken gone?
We've still got an echo. I know what it is. Bluetooth hearing aids.
Take them out.
Bluetooth hearing aids.
Yeah. Oh. You there, Therese?
Yes, I am.
Are you with us, Tim?
Certainly am, John.
Are you, or you are or you aren't?
You know, I'm here.
So are we able to, everybody's muted now, are we able to start?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay, so I'll declare the Melbourne Community Board meeting of the 26th of October, beg your pardon, get it right, 2021 open. Right. Okay, so I welcome you all here. I have an apology from Councillor Jenny Gallagher. Would someone like to move that? I'll move by Judith, second by Councillor. Second by Councillor Mugford. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried or nod. Right. And identification of any extraordinary business. You do? Okay, so those items are noted.
Yeah, I've got a couple of others, but I can do that in the report. Yeah.
Conflicts of interest. Confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting held by Zoom. Would someone like to move those, please?
Move that they be accepted as true and correct record.
Second, moved, Karen, seconded by Judith. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Okay, going to the agenda, which is page 12, which is actions follow-up for staff. That's all pretty self-explanatory.
Need to come up now. That Therese has sent us.
Oh, Karen's handed me the comments from Therese from previous meeting, but I'm not sure that they actually need any decisions, are they? They're for information, basically.
Yes, actions from the previous meeting.
Yeah.
It just requires a mover and a seconder to accept, please.
I beg your pardon?
I'll move.
Do you want to move her on a seconder?
Oh, for the minutes? Or for that information? Oh, okay.
Information received.
Received. Right. Karen will move and Bob will second. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Okay, scrolling to page 12. That's a letter from the Deputy BBC for information.
Could I add to that? Following this letter, I've had an email today from Bernadette.
I think you're on mute, Judith. I can't hear anything. You're on mute, Judith.
Right. This is a letter from Sumi from the Darfield High School to Bernadette Ryan, who looks after the Selwyn Sister City Committee. And it's just to let you know that Mr. Karita has become a mayor. He will start working on the 15th of November, which is great news. Could you please let Malvern Community Board know? I will send a letter to you for John from Mayor Ishida tomorrow.
Thank you, Judith. I've got that. I've communicated a question to Bernadette asking if we are going to write a joint letter from the Mayor, Alison and myself, or we're going to write 3 different letters. Bernadette is out of the office today, and I'll follow that up tomorrow. Right. Well, it'll be on your agenda as well. Okay. All right. Thank you.
If you're going to talk in that room, can you actually unmute, please?
All right. You want us to all unmute Kim?
It'd probably be easier as long as we don't interfere with each other.
Well, we can try.
No. Usually you can. Can you not? Oh. Doesn't work.
We'll try unmuted.
Works in Christchurch City Council.
Judith, can we just
Try to unmute, yes.
Okay. Going back to the agenda.
You're muted, John. You're muted.
Okay, how's that?
You'll get
There's a lot of interference. I would suggest you stay on mute until you speak, please.
Stay on mute.
But should you can
So Bill, you must, I don't know if anyone's speaking, but I can't hear anything from anyone.
What was that, Tim?
I'm not too sure.
Hi, Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, I
Can
can.
you hear me, Tim?
Yes, I can.
Board members, I
can't
would
hear
ask
you.
you to, I would ask you in the same room to please stay muted unless you talk, because we can't hear, and also there's a lot of background noise. So please remain muted unless you speak. Thank you.
Sorry, Therese, we didn't get what that last bit of that statement, please.
I was asking the board members who are all present in the Darfield Library meeting room to please stay muted unless you talk. If you're all unmuted, there's a lot of distraction and background noise, and neither Tim nor I, and I suppose other people may not be able to hear. There's a lot of echo. So just please mute yourselves unless you talk. Thank you.
Okay, so I have unmuted myself and everybody else is muted, are they?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I'll go back to the agenda. Is that better, Therese?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right. And are you hearing us now, Tim?
Yes, I can hear clearly now. I think muting is a good idea for those people who aren't speaking.
What about you, Ken? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. Right, go back to the agenda. Page 13. I have a letter here that was in the agenda from the Darfield Preschool and Nursery, who are looking for assistance, which they have done previously, to get an access way from their property through to the neighbouring subdivision. I don't think there's a great deal we can do for them. So does anybody have a view? What's their thoughts? No comment?
Well, the Selwyn District Council has suggested they come to the community board and we write a letter in support of their application. So council must have decided it was worthwhile us writing a letter. It doesn't say here who the letter would go to.
Where was this job, John? I missed that.
Page
13.
Could I just say that we wouldn't be writing a letter to the developer, we would be writing a letter to the Darfield preschool saying that we think it's a very good idea to have pedestrian access so parents can walk their children. But the letter would not be to the developer, it would be to the Darfield preschool.
I understand what you're saying, Judith, but the preschool want our support to get it out, and they've been rejected by the developer. So Why did we write it in preschool?
Because they would include the letter with any, they would probably send a copy of the letter to the developer when they write yet again. There's very little they can do. If the developer is rejecting their application, there's absolutely nothing they can do to purchase that piece of land. It's entirely up to the developer as the owner whether or not they sell it.
There are
Owners there that live in some drives there, Taronga, and the owners live in Taronga and Taitapu, and we need to have their landowners' permission to.
Okay, well, I think we understand the issue. We have been here before and they have seeked to get the same outcome before and they have been unsuccessful. So, and that we are incredibly sympathetic to their needs and what they want to do. And I've been to have a look at the site again. But unless those neighbours or those property owners agree, I'm not sure what can be done.
The only thing, Jonathan, if we actually sent them a letter back supporting them to get it through the surveyor or through the people that own the place, the sections, that's the only thing. Other than that, we're not going to get any further than we have in the past.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable suggestion. I think that's a reasonable board supporting their initiative and encouraging it, but that is all we can really do.
Could I say this is entirely a legal issue and some kind of assurance that this will be a temporary access only because the developer's keeping it for financial return. That might actually help if they could get some kind of legal undertaking that it would be temporary only until such time as the area was developed.
Agreed, Judith. Agreed. But we are agreed that we will write and to them on behalf of the board supporting their request for that, and they can use that letter to whatever they want. Okay, thank you. Did you understand that, Madam Secretary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Back to page 14, which includes Ken May's reports, which we will acknowledge because at the end of the day we were going to do them verbally, but it's there in the agenda. Would you like to present it, Ken?
I'll move that it be accepted. I think it's self-explanatory. I don't think there's any explanation needed.
Moved by Ken and seconded by Karen that we accept the report. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Scrolling down to page. Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, too. Thank you, Karen. Well, I'll start in the top left-hand corner. Judith.
I have a written report here, which I did email to all the members of the board, and I think to Therese as well. Yes. Right. First of all, obituaries. I think we should publicly acknowledge the contribution that both Mr. Gavin King and Mrs. Margaret Thompson made to this community. Gavin was chair of the Selwyn Rural Water Supply for many years and member of the previous Malvern County Council, I believe. And Margaret did a huge amount of work down the main street of Darfield. All the all the plantings, and we did them for many years until they decided the traffic was too vigorous to support that. So I think we should acknowledge Gavin and Margaret as great contributors to this community.
I think let's deal with that. I think that is an outstanding idea. I think we should do that. And we will do.
Thank you. Yes. Right, roadside west of Darfield. Could a request be made to Mitchell Sawmill to grade off and gravel the area they're using for car parking or otherwise tidy it up?
Before you go any further, Judith, have you observed that they've done some work over there?
Ah, good. Here's a neighbour. I said, here's a neighbour. Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
I shall inspect it and see whether we think more should be done or not, but it's certainly looking quite disgusting, and gravelling it would be the simplest answer.
Admittedly, I did not stop to see the completed job, but they had a tractor and they had gravel and they were looking to fill the potholes when I went there.
That's good. Probably the staff were complaining as well in terms of parking there. It would be very difficult.
Possibly.
Yes. Now, the review of the community committees and their role, we need to be kept informed of that. It appears to be a moving feast, and there's still no concrete decisions made, I think, as to the future structure of those kind of committees within the council or outside the council. So I think at some stage, perhaps we should have an informal discussion as to where community committee acknowledgements. We did it previously say that we would write to some of these committees and acknowledge their work in the past. So again, I think probably we need to have an informal discussion as to which committees we'll write to and what we will say to them. Tussock Square Japanese Garden, an application for funding has been made to the Westview Fund for funding towards that, so we will have an outcome sometime in the future. And the old council chambers, the future of the building is uncertain and a photographic record is needed. Mr. Rob Lawrence wishes to make a photographic record, so permissions we would need to do that, because it is certainly an historic building, even if it's not formally recognised as one. So I've attended the Kiwi Recreation Reserve Committee and the Kiwi, the Greendale Recreation Reserve Committee and the Kiwi Community Committee. I received the minutes of that. I have some
why don't we do them now, Judith, please?
I have some matters to tidy up in the old area, and from these photos you will see that the weeds actually have outgrown the plantings, so completely surrounded by grass and weeds. Also areas that have been barked are now just a mat of weeds as well, and they were barked to make maintenance a little easier. It's going to be quite a big job to bring them back to a good state. And that shows very clearly the weeds around the plantings. An enormous amount of community work has gone into those plantings. The Kiwi School has done it, as well as one of the, I can't remember the name, a group that goes and helps with native plantings around the district, plus the community. And the undertaking was, when the council took over the maintenance of the reserve from the committee, that these plantings would be kept tidy and looked after. In no way have they been kept tidy, and in no way have they been looked after. They are in an appalling state, and it's going to cost a lot of money to bring those plantings back to the condition to which they should be, to allow. And having weeds surrounding them like that will not allow the plants to grow either. They will outcompete them. So I think we really need to express our dismay and disappointment in that condition. And we need to know who is responsible for doing this. Why have they not been maintained? Is it a matter of budget? The council must have realised when they took over the maintenance of these reserves from the committees, some of who were doing enormous amounts of work, that it was going to cost more money and more staff time to keep them looked after. They don't look after themselves. If the community is not looking after them, then council has to look after them. So it's just been a huge waste of money, waste of ratepayer money, and a waste of volunteer time. Is that message clear?
That message is clear, Judith. We will note that in the minutes, and we will ask a request to staff as to, can they give us an update and report on the state of the maintenance of the Kiwi Reserve and what issues they see, what they propose to remedy those issues.
And I believe some other reserves are also expressing dismay as to their condition as well.
It may be the case, but in this particular case, we our inquiry into
Yes, we will. Yes, that would be grateful. I mean, the committee is grateful for the amount of time and energy staff have put into the reserve and to the new equipment that have been put in, the new playground, the shifting of the sports fields, but it's still got to be looked after as a whole. A reserve is more than a cricket ground or a football ground. It is an area for the community as a whole.
Those comments are noted. The secretary, I'm sure, has noted those, and they will go into a request to go to staff for feedback. Correct, Madam Secretary?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Okay. Further. Would you like to move?
I would like to move my verbal report. Thank you.
And Bob Mugford will second it. Thank you. All in favour, please say
Thank
aye.
you, Mr. Mugford.
Aye. Carried. Working along, Bill.
I've got to get it so that it works.
What works?
Right. The mute. I mean the unmute, yeah. We just had a meeting the other night, and we had a response from, remember the picnic tables that got stolen? They're going to, they're ready to be replaced. And so, but they've asked if they could put them into the reserve. But when we said, you know, that we didn't handle the reserve at that particular time, and we would rather them be used at the outside the pie shop, because the picnic tables there were second-rate things, and if we put some nice new ones there, and so we're going to write to Chris Stewart to say that that would be helpful. Also, the picnic, the bus shelters that have been sort of purchased and delivered, or not delivered at the moment, from the People's Collective, the other organisation in the township, is just about ready to have done all the paperwork, and they should be doing the foundations in the next couple of months, and they should be ready for next winter and or next the summertime and what have you. And but there was one thing I'd like to comment on, which is not part of mine, and that's the Kiwi Bowling Club. I've looked at the latest discretionary grants that we have given, like the Hororata Golf Club and a few others, and none of them were actually related to the actual sport part of it, and we turned down the bowling club because the mower wasn't part of the actual. And I reckon that we should rewrite to the Kiwi Bowling Club asking them to apply again for money for the lawnmower. And I don't know what other people think about that, but the very reason that we turned it down is the very reason that we've granted the last three. And I think that it's unfair on the bowling club at that particular time that we turned them down because the mower for the thing wasn't related to the actual club. Was I think it's just as related as a shed. Yeah. And I think that they should be asked to reapply for help for that particular mower, because evidently they had some problems with it anyway, and they might need to spend some more money. So, yeah. But that's all I have on that. I do have a on Sheffield, but that's in general business for the. Yeah. So as I say, we haven't had very much happen at all in the last 2 months. In fact, we have combined the agenda for the two meetings here. So I turn the mic off, do I? Yeah, but I'll move that my report be accepted.
Do I have a seconder, please?
Yep, I'll second that.
Judith, thank you. Ken will second it then. Okay. All in favour that we receive, please say aye.
Aye.
Just picking up on what you've said, Bill, I think you mentioned the last three applications. Now, can you just expand what which ones you're referring to?
Gentlemen, you need to unmute yourself if you're speaking, because neither Therese or myself will be able to hear this.
Right.
Yeah, the one was for the shed for the golf, to store the stuff in for the, and I thought just as appropriate for a lawnmower for the bowling club.
I have a conflict of interest because I'm related to golf club, but what I don't understand, and you've muted yourself, Bill, is that the golf club
provided funds to.
I can't hear a thing.
I think, unfortunately, Chairman Jum has frozen his screen.
Yes, John, your screen is frozen.
Could I say in support of Jum that that the board has a tradition, a history of giving very clearly for consent costs only for some projects. Oh, I appear to be the only person here.
Judith, how can you separate consent costs?
That was the reason.
Because without a consent, you can't have a building. Without plans, you can't have a building, and they all
Exactly. Yep.
Without a lawnmower, you can't have a bowling green. The same.
I made no.
A comment about what the board does.
Yeah.
Made no towards consent costs.
I think maybe we need to wait till Jum's back online as the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't mind if that's the same. If that follows true, that's okay. But if it was an opportunity to give them some, because there's not a great deal of difference between old people and young ones, only the years in between. They're both desperate for money.
I'm not disputing that, Bill. But if we have visited the issue once, we would have to have a really good reason to revisit it again, or obviously if there was another application made and we can't do retrospective, we would have to consider it.
Yeah, just give them an opportunity. But if it was fair and has been fair, there's no need to actually do it. But if there is a miscarriage of justice, it should be rectified. That's all. Yep.
All right. So where were we?
Well, you were over there.
So I moved. I had to have no choice. The community flat.
Karen hasn't given her report.
I've got a beautiful picture of both of you.
Geez, you're lucky.
My verbal report, I haven't had many meetings for a while. I did have the Glentunnel Colgate Reserve meeting, and there was discussion about the building on the domain, the sports pavilion, and I understand that it's fairly and squarely back in the domain. The reserve boards have to decide who's going to look after it. So I'll be talking about that issue, and I think Douglas has been talking to Phil Shaw about it, but somewhere along the line they need to get it sorted out so someone actually is looking after it and it doesn't deteriorate. I had a Glentunnel Township meeting last night, and everything they're talking about spending their discretionary funds and things, and we'll have another meeting in November to finish talking about that. Other than that, things are fairly peaceful everywhere, I think. In general business, I would like to have a small discussion about the community committees issues, but we can do that in general business. I move my report be accepted.
I'll second that.
All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Councillor Mason? It's gone flat. Yeah. Councillor Mason, you got it?
No, nothing really.
Yeah. Are you on again, John? Yeah. No, I haven't really got anything to bring forward. Yeah, right. I think the big thing is, like with Sandra in the jail, I think we have to make a decision. If we're still in where we are and into a lockdown, I don't believe it can go ahead in any way, shape or form. So I think that's a decision, because it's not worth it. We'll make that December, but it's not spending a lot of time trying to get money for raffles and such like if it's not going to go ahead.
I agree, and you are basically caught, like many community groups at the moment, who are very hesitant to commit to a lot of things because they just are concerned that the effort and the planning will be totally wasted. And that's the environment we're living in. And well, Karen said before, there's not a lot happening. The reality is that the community is trying to survive, get itself vaccinated, understand what the situation is, and therefore tending to stay close to home and not get too involved in too many things. But all you can do for your
For Honorata Domain, we won't make a decision obviously till December, but we will do our very best to see if we can have this function in some shape or form, because everything will have been cancelled or has been cancelled. So we managed to do partially for the Honorata Church Fair in gardens. So, maybe we can be a wee bit creative and think outside the square, just so that our wider community, and that includes anyone in Selwyn who'd like to come to Christmas in the Domain at Honorata. So there might be some creative thinking just so we can give something to the community.
Thank you. I don't have an individual report to give. So is there any other reports? All right, going back to the agenda on page 17, and there is the manager's report to be tabled. And I will move from the chair that we receive that report. And if there are any questions, we would then would ask the questions of that report.
Just wonder if we should formally support council in their efforts to bring some kind of rationalisation to the Three Waters proposals.
There's no doubt about that we should support them totally, because it's a nonsense, an absolute nonsense.
So what are you supporting? What are you moving?
I don't think we need to go as far as move. I think just as a comment, we should say that we are prepared to support council in their work in perhaps finding a solution or a proposal that will best serve the residents of Selwyn in the future.
Well, we're like everybody else, we're half in the dark, aren't we? So how the heck can we make a decision?
We're not making a decision.
Yeah, no. How can we make
a decision? We're simply supporting council in their work.
Yeah.
If I could clarify, I think what you're saying and picking up what Bill's saying. The board is supportive of the work that council is doing, investigating and trying to get an understanding of what's proposed, communicating and getting feedback from the Selwyn community and using that feedback when presenting to government. And it is a confusing and a difficult subject, and we support the council that they continue along the line that they have followed up until now. Agreed. Okay, the minutes will show that. Thank you.
Yeah, but there's still some doubts about it. You know, even what the support of the council is, because they're saying things like, you know, we're going to lose all our assets. We're not going to take them away. We're still going to use them. You know, the assets are still going to be there. They're like roads. They're still there, and we'll still be using them. We're not taking them away. And but this is what we've been told. You know, there's about $6 billion worth or something. They're going to give us $2 billion, so we're losing $4 billion out of it. But we can still use them for. You know, it just doesn't. None of it adds up. And the crazy part about it is that the very argument that the council, that the government are using to support this is exactly the same as what the council used to support the amalgamation of all the committees and reserves and all the rest of it, and said it was going to be better for us. They're using exactly the same argument. One they like, well, the council liked one and doesn't like the other one. That's, you know, let's get real. We've got to be consistent. I don't think there was anybody that said that the new proposal was going to be wonderful. They might have said it could have been better, but it's exactly the same principle that the council that the government is using now that the council rejects. But it was totally 100% in support of the reserves and the township committees and the hall committees. Exactly the same. They're still there. I'm undecided because I don't know the whole story. And I'm prepared to be swayed one way or the other.
Thank you for those comments, Bill. And look, we're not disputing, but I think what we are saying as a board that we are aware of the issue. We are waiting for ongoing dialogue from council, and it's a matter that will go on for a while yet. And we all want to be part of that discussion, which we will be as members of the community when we see a bit more information.
I reckon we should stop there. I totally agree with what you said. Up to there until we find out more information.
That's exactly where we are, Bill. That's exactly. We have put out to the DIA questionnaire of all the questions the council's put together. We are waiting for answers.
Yeah.
Until you get answers, you can't make a decision because you don't know the facts. And that's yeah. So as I say, at this stage, we've asked the questions, haven't had the answers, and council has decided that they won't give any infrastructure away willingly until we have the answers. That's where we are.
If I go back to the agenda, which I'm probably the only one, I have, and I come up to page 21. Now, this is a request for a grant from the Springfield Township Committee, which appears some of this grant, when you read it, is going to be used for decoration and the suggestion that it makes people feel good. I don't know. Yeah, one at a time. And we'll have a general discussion before we move anything from me. I want to speak on this subject.
Yeah, the whole reasoning behind this is that the township committee have no discretionary funds now, so they would normally fund this something like some street decorations, etc., out of discretionary funds. So That's why they've gone this way.
They do have $1,000 discretionary fund for this financial year. I would like to see the funds being applied for more tangible things like the bouncy castle, the free sausages, and actually running the event than just decorations. I find that's rather a lot of money just for funds, just for decorations. I personally feel that they need to go. Whenever we've had anyone apply for an event, they've gone for specified things like food, entertainment, bouncy castles, things for the children to do, which puts a smile on their faces too and provides a good feeling in the community. So I would need to adjust.
Does anybody else have a view?
I'll just comment there on Karen. I think that that's what they're actually asking for, to fund the bouncy castles. There's quite a considerable amount of money goes towards that. Last year, apparently they had a bouncy castle and some bigger kids got onto the little kids bouncy castle. So they've decided they need to have something a bit stronger for the bigger kids and regulate the abuse of the bouncy castle.
If I look into the application on those points, $450 castle hire, 222 for sausages and bread, and 50 for lollies. 20, whatever that adds up. And whatever the way I read it.
Do you want me to say that?
Say it again.
I would move that we give them $1,000 towards their Christmas party.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation? I have a seconder, Councillor Maitland.
I'm a bit close.
It's open for discussion.
Well, it just strikes me as a bit, crazy that we can't look after a community that's actually been struggling since May, June this year with flooding and so forth, but we can give $3,000 to a golf club for a bloody building consent. It's just, I don't know.
Any further comments?
It was $1,500 for a building consent, not $3,000.
Any further comments? Bill?
Yeah, well, to be consistent about what I said before, and I think that the mover was quite correct about supplying those things that are part of, because the Springfield Township has already provided fairy lights and all of those sort of things out of its discretionary money. So it's not as if they haven't got any, it's just that they want a bit more. And to be consistent with what I said before, I think that that I would support the motion. Yeah.
I have a recommendation for $1,000. Are you speaking in favour or against it? Favour. Judith?
Yes, I'm happy to support the $1,000 application. I probably sort of got a bit more, perhaps to 1,500, but no, I'm happy with 1,000.
You can move it.
They can apply.
You can.
But you know, is it put it open for every other township to apply for the same
Would you
amount?
like to move an amendment to?
You know, setting a precedent has got to have something, isn't it?
No, but No, I won't move an amendment, but I think we need to encourage them to apply to the event fund as well.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion that has been moved by Karen Mears that we grant $1,000 to the Springfield Township for their Christmas function? Is there any further comments before I put that motion? All right, I'm going to put the motion that reads that the Malvern Community Board provide $1,000 towards the Springfield Township to go towards the expenses of their Christmas function. It's been moved by Karen and Councillor Mugford seconded the recommendation, because there was no recommendation moved at that stage. All those in favour, please say aye. I have aye from Bill Woods, an aye from Judith, an aye from Councillor Mugford, an aye from Karen. Ken? Hello? Hello? You there, Ken?
Yeah, I put my thumb up.
Yeah, are you an aye or a nay?
Well, I'll accept it.
All right. I declare the motion carried. Right. Back to the agenda. Next application is request for grant.
I'm afraid your screen's freezing up there, Joe.
The cost of you're not. Oh, okay. Well, the internet's unstable, it's saying. But going from the agenda, there is a recommendation for an application from the Melbourne Youth Trust for $800, I believe. Yes, it is. Do I have a mover? Moved by Karen. Seconder. Seconded by Judith Pesco. It's now open for discussion. No, not seconded. So it's open for discussion. This has happened. This was on last year, and it was reasonably successful. As far as that goes. Good.
I noticed they said the Melbourne Lions are supporting it. I'd like to know in what capacity the Melbourne Lions are supporting it. There's no mention there.
I can report on that. The Melbourne Lions are providing and cooking a sausage with a bit of bread and a can of drink for each. Not financially, no, only in kind, providing them for very, snack sort of thing.
Right, thank you for that. It's not,
I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Moving on. Right, page 35, which is, this is a really large application for $71.50 for the girl guide that comes out of this ward. I'll move it from the chair if someone likes to second it. Seconded by Karen.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
All in favour?
All in favour, please say
Aye.
carried. Oh, now. Okay, I'm now on page 41, which is just a spreadsheet for the discretionary funds, and then I'm on to a list of community committees minutes have been received, and I propose we move to general business, which is not actually on the agenda, but there is one or two you've got. Yeah.
oh, could I just note before we finish this section of the agenda that we haven't actually got a financial report?
No, but
Agreed, there isn't a financial report. Possibly next year, if we could put that at a later date.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, right?
Yes. Thank you, Trace.
Thank you. I will do that.
I don't mind if you are chair, though. It's okay. All right. So now we're into general business. Karen.
Has anybody got Zoom?
You could come round and sit here, Bill.
Bob's, we come and go on all our computers.
Yeah, mine, yeah.
Bob's consistent.
Have you?
Going round all the community committees at the moment is concern at how long it is taking for the situation on what's going to happen with community committees and for the future. And so the community committees have a series of bullet points which they are putting forward. And I would like to think that the community board could support these bullet points that are being put forward. So I will mention these bullet points, and will we have a general discussion, John, and then see if you want them included, everyone's happy, or people have other comments to add. So the first one was that the townships have their community committee, as they do now, that it's not amalgamated into a huge block for one community meeting, that the communities can have their individual committees. I'll go a little bit further as to how that could be managed. And then maybe once every 3 months or every 6 months, you have one with staff and amalgamation, you know, of a district for people to come together. We will still, as I point out to them, have the community boards there who will still have their afternoons meet and greet going around the community. So there's still, and different communities can join in on their next door neighbours and things. So that sort of support is still ongoing. That these community committees still have access to a roving secretary, but with a minimum of 6 meetings, maximum of 6 meetings a year. So they're not going to have access to a roving secretary every month, not necessary. Free access to their local hall or council building for their 6 meetings. That somehow there is still access for a discretionary fund, whether that's in the form of a big pot that they have told that they have allocated out of that pot a certain amount of money that they can apply for any community functions they want to have, or just little things. I think the $1,000 actually works quite well. That's not too difficult for people to spend. And hopefully there wouldn't be wasted money with that amount. The other one is membership of the committee to be similar to what they have now, in the policy proposals, it was proposed that on each of these committees, which were assumed to be much bigger than what the districts or the communities are asking for, that there was a teacher and who else was there, Judith? Teacher,
Please.
the police, Maori representative, various representatives, that maybe if you want those people, that they come together for the big district meetings, which are every 3 or 6 months. That's not really not going to achieve very much. And the other one was that, can this process please be brought to a head before Christmas? It's just dragged on far too long, is a message coming through from our communities. They're in enough disarray as it is because of this change, which never seems to come to a head. So I would like to ask for some comments from the other board members on whether they want to support these comments or what.
Could I just say that there is not any enthusiasm for a larger combined committee, that committees want to retain their individuality, and indeed there is not a lot of similarity, for instance, between Darfield and Greendale or Kiwi. They have different issues, different problems to deal with, different aspirations to work towards, and certainly a combined meeting once every 6 months would actually be very good, but we should let the committees exist individually. The other thing I would like to say is that even if council decides to dissolve these committees and doesn't wish to deal with them in the future, there is no reason at all why the community board cannot themselves support individual committees in these communities, and they would then report to the community board with whatever they might like to do, and the community board would support them. But there is no need for them to be subcommittees of council. Yes.
Yeah, Judith, I agree with what you've said. You know, there certainly is.
Have you got comments?
Okay.
Go for it, Ken.
Yeah, I don't think there is any desire by any of the communities to combine with the other communities. Springfield is allergic to Sheffield because they came from different roots. You know, Sheffield basically is a farming community. Originally, Springfield was a railway community. So, you know, and it's the same all the way through. And you find that they've always competed against each other in farming contests, in sporting contests, and so forth. So there isn't a great desire by any of these communities to combine with other communities just for the sake of somebody saying that they need to combine because, you know, somebody who is an urbanite doesn't like rural communities, and that's what it's coming across as.
Thank you, Bill. No, Bill's declined. It's not happy, but I'm not sure you're ever happy. Bob?
No, I'm here to listen. I'm actually trying to listen to what people in the community are saying, so that's why I'm here and other places to see which way it goes later on.
So, well, now that Bob's unmuted, sometimes.
Hang on.
I'm just going to make
My comments, Karen.
Okay.
I agree with the bulk of what you said, Karen. And I've always felt that communities should have the opportunity to have some sort of representation. I felt that 6 meetings a year would be more than adequate to cover that. They do require the continuity of a secretary to function. And if we don't have a secretary, they won't continue to function, because that is always the most difficult task to fulfill. And also having access to their own local community centre seems logical for 6 times a year. So that's been my desire. The larger groups, no, they will not work, because you will find that people will not commit to them, and they will be dysfunctional, because you lose that commitment to each individual tight community which presently exists. So we are living in a change, and we acknowledge that, and that probably is the hard bit, and we just need to move to the proposed change and then bed it in as quickly as possible to lessen the confusion. So I'm pretty much in agreement with those comments. Obviously, it sits in the hands of the elected councillors, etc. Judith, you had your hand up.
I think the committees are just as confused as anybody else. The messages they've been getting, the process keeps changing, and the committees themselves are just confused as to what their future is going to be. Will they remain committees of council? Will they not remain committees of council? Will they be dissolved and reformed as something else? There needs to be some clear direction from council as to what they see the future is, because we will lose people. They will be disheartened and just dissolve themselves. And I would not like to think that was the ultimate aim of council, to save themselves a lot of work. We need to keep the community involved in what council is doing and what their community is doing. Without the community being involved, what are we doing this all for?
I believe that, and following on from Judith, that they don't have to be committees of council to represent the communities. There will be an advantage for them not to be a community of council when we talk about submissions and etc. We all know about that. But they do need to feel loved by council, and that would be indicated by the physical support of the secretary and the access to a building. And then we would go from there. I cannot see quite how you're going to manage funds when you don't have an account and the whole process, unless application becomes very tedious, and people probably don't do it. If you make a grant, it's virtually a gift into an unknown account, and I don't think the Auditor General is going to wear that. That public funds need to be accountable. So that's a bit of a grey area. These comments really are for Councillor Mugford to take forward in the discussion, if that's helpful. Last word, Ken?
I hear what you're saying, John, and I think that basically you've put it in a nutshell. But what we're doing is actually disenfranchising the community with the way this process is going. And when you've got people who are keen to support their communities, you don't go and put a nail through their feet. You know, you actually find a way to work with them to achieve what they're trying to achieve for their communities. And sure, they might need to apply for funds. They might need to inform council that these things are happening in their community and need attention. You can't expect the likes of Craig Westley to actually monitor every reserve in the Selwyn district all by himself. He needs to have people looking at it. You know, just as the roading people need people to have you know, be able to tell them what's going on in their communities. And I think we have got some very strong, vibrant committees that need to be, you know, fostered. But anyhow, that's up to council.
Thank you for those comments, Ken. If we had hindsight and we knew where we were going, and we had, and I'm talking the proverbial council, we had sat down in a closed room and talked about what we had already in relationship to committees, and then talked about where we would like to get to and what the blueprint might have looked at when we moved to it. And we had put that together in a package of one. I think most of this confusion and animosity and dissatisfaction would have disappeared because people would have seen, okay, they would have focused on what the new proposed structure was, and they would have put their energies into maybe altering it or slightly tweaking it. And I think you would have ended up, but I can't do anything about that now. That's history as far as that goes. Anybody else got the last word before we move on? Yes, Karen.
Just a series of comments. We have 3 hall communities. We have Kimberley, Greendale and Glenroy. And I have to express a lot of disappointment that they are never acknowledged that they exist. Their halls have been taken sort of away. I know we have local people that still help run them, but they are not acknowledged in any of the memos that go out for the workshops or anything. Just because they're not in a township, they are still communities, and they do have change, and they acknowledge that they do need to be able to blend in with another community. And if they do have their own residents committee, that they will be on their own, and they have to go to another committee to get their voice heard. And so I would like to see that any future correspondence from the staff and the council, that they are included, those 3 communities. I just think it's just plain rude to ignore them. Also, I think it needs to be acknowledged that with all the unrest, quite a lot of communities have merged, and I know in our Hororata Tarawera ward, we have gone down in the number of committees quite a lot, and I think that that might still happen. So you have actually lost a lot of committees because they've merged into one for the township, and I think that if we do end up with one for each township, that's not a bad idea. So I would support that idea, that you don't have 3 or 4 different committees in a township, which is something I didn't mention. The community board, I think it needs to be acknowledged that it has been accepted that there probably will be a community board going forward in the future, and you need to acknowledge that that community board is there and that it will help be a representative between the council and the committees. And I think that that needs more recognition from the Selwyn District Council, and the community board will decide how they're going to manage their committees, especially if they're not committees of council, which I also don't think is a bad idea. I think these people will have a little bit more autonomy and can raise funds themselves to do projects and things. They obviously still have to work in with the council and get permission to do things, but it might just get a little bit more of this community back again. And the main thing that concerns them is, without being a committee of council, is how do we keep our communication links open with the Selwyn District Council? Well, one of the main ways is through the community board. And I think that's really important, that that is not forgotten. And then there will be other ways, like how they manage their discretionary funds and things, which will be part of the communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. hopefully, Councillor Mugford, that might give you a little bit of a feeling of what the board or the personnel around the table think, for you to take forward to the dialogue at the higher level. Okay, thank you. Now I've got another little bit of general business, but I'm just going to hold that there very patiently, and I've missed you out altogether, but there's an opportunity for you to address the board about what's happening in your department, and I know you're under a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of publicity about consents and speed and everything, and we'd welcome any comments you have to give about the subject, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just quickly, there were a number of things I was going to mention. We've gone through an accreditation process, which we go through every 2 years for a building consent function. And while these results are only preliminary, they were taken out by IANZ on behalf of MB. But the results have been quite complimentary in terms of our processes, even though our timeframes are down or up rather. That's the case right across the country. So there's recognition that that is the case. But they described our processes as being some of the best, if not the best in the country. And so we wait for the final report in the next week or so, but it looks as if we will quite easily get accreditation again for another 2 years. There's 8 non-compliances, which is a very good result. Most of those are minor matters that we're able to resolve on site. So that's a good news story, community board members, that we've retained our accreditation process. The district plan continues on, and there was a report in David Ward's report that was tabled earlier on. And then the other big story in my areas is the private plan changes, and they continue on. Currently, we have 22 private plan changes. That's probably, well, that is the highest in the country for a TA to be managing at any one time. It's unprecedented. There are a number of factors for that, but obviously the residential boom has seen the demand for land in Selwyn to continue and to increase, if anything. One thing that you would have seen in the news is the RMA amendment bill allowing for greater housing supply, 3-storey housing. They will impact upon both the private plan changes that we are currently processing and the district plan. We'll have to accommodate the outcomes of the RMA amendment bill into those processes, and we're taking legal advice how that might be done. But it appears that we'll have to introduce quite a large variation to our proposed district plan to accommodate the resource management enabling housing supply and other matters amendment bill, which looks like will become law quite quickly in the beginning of December. And if you would have seen the reports in the press, but this can allow for up to 3-storey housing as of right, 50% site coverage. So if you've got a site that's 1,000 square metres, you'll be able to use half of that, 500 square metres for building, and have 2 or more 3-storey buildings on it with fairly reduced setbacks and boundaries. I might add that the geographic scope of this bill is a wee bit confused. In some places, the bill talks about all of Selwyn District. In other parts, it just talks about that high growth part, the tier 1 part. So we're taking some legal advice about what that means. My reading of the bill is that it will only include the geographic scope will only include those eastern parts of the district, and not those parts, including Malvern. But we'll get a confirmation from our legal people about that. So again, yeah, I guess the government keeps moving the goalposts in an attempt to, I guess, address some issues around the country, not so much down here, but perhaps in the North Island and Auckland and the like, in terms of a massive shortage of housing. And as I said, the amount of building consents coming through our department is phenomenal. We were, I think, from memory, the 3rd highest in the country. We for the last year ended June this year, we produced more building consents than Wellington, places like Wellington, Tauranga, and we're only exceeded by Christchurch and Auckland. So that gives you the sort of the scale of the building demand here in Selwyn. Per 1,000 head of population, we produce 26 building consents. To give you some idea what that means, Christchurch City, we're about 7, Auckland are about 6 or 7, and other places like Tauranga are about 7 or 8. The average is around about 7 or 8. So we're nearly 3 times the average in terms of building consents per head of population. And that just gives you a feel for the amount of volume coming through a department. And that flows on right across council, obviously. People build a house and then there's rate demands, there's complaints about noise, animal control. So the building consent process is at the forefront of a burgeoning volume of activity right across the council. So that's a bit of an update there. Mr. Chair, happy to take any questions or comments.
Tim, do you have any idea where the Kiwi Tavern stands?
Yeah, I've been in some discussions around the Kiwi Tavern. It's very close. If it hasn't been granted consent, it was imminent. We're just waiting upon a consent from Waka Kotahi, that's NZTA, and I believe that consent was forthcoming towards the end of last week. So I would imagine that the consent will be coming out in the next day or so, if it hasn't already come out.
Thank you, Tim. I've got a question from Karen Mears in a minute. I'd have to make the comment that there is unprecedented building going on in the Darfield area, which we've never seen before, the likes of it, to be honest. But Karen's got a question. Yeah. Hey, Karen.
Tim, that's interesting. I just was wondering if you could comment on the comments that we've seen in the news and various places about how fast Selwyn is growing and the planning that might need or is going on in relation to Christchurch and the proximity of our neighbouring towns and things. Are we going to become a super city, or there has been comments that maybe we're growing too fast or that we need to slow down, or I don't know. What is your opinion of some of those comments?
Well, we certainly are growing at a very fast rate, and I can't see that slowing down given the plan changes that are coming through. I think around about 12,000 households proposed in the current number of plan changes that we're currently just processing. So growth isn't going to slow down. We are working with Christchurch City and Waimak and ECAN, Waka Kotahi, in terms of coming up with a spatial plan that is making some progress and will hopefully coming out for some consultation next year. So we're attempting to get ahead of the game. It's very difficult though to do that with the private plan changes and the government making some changes in terms of shifting the goalposts in terms of how we manage growth. In terms of the super city, very hard to say. There are a number of processes underway, including the reform of local government, which is being led by the former chief executive from Waimak, Jim Palmer. There's the 3 waters going on, obviously. There's RMA reform. So there is, I think, a unprecedented sort of, we're in a real piece in time where there's going to be a huge change in local government. What that actually means, I'm not too sure. The reform of local government could see some amalgamations across it, but I think in particular, that reform of local government will look at our functions and what we focus on as an industry, as a sector. So yeah, interesting times.
Thank you, Tim, for those comments. Just generally, how are you getting on trying to maintain your staff numbers to fulfil this huge demand?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It is always difficult. Unfortunately, there are not many. There's not a huge pool of building consent processes in particular, and we have failed to recruit. We've been on a recruitment drive for a while. That's why we said about the program for training our own people. And currently we have six people involved in the training program. We're investing heavily in them, and it's a 12-week program. And we've got another provider outside that's assisting with their training. So and there's no clear pipeline for building consent processes nationwide. It's a nationwide issue. And what happens is that, especially in the Canterbury region, people tend to hop around from one council to the other in terms of the conditions and the pay and their own personal preferences. So we are trying to do that by setting up our own training program. There's always been shortages of building people, engineers, planners. So there are some issues, but we're actually, I think, in a not a bad space at the moment, and we're managing. As I say, IANZ, we're very impressed with their processes, and I'm just very proud of our staff who continue to get through these huge volumes of consents in very challenging times with COVID and the like.
I imagine, Tim, that you will set a date early in December and towards the end of January where you will refuse taking any more consents to try and give yourselves a bit of a break, which you usually do, and do a bit of catch up.
Yeah, we can't do that arbitrarily. There is some statutory timeframes. I forget what they are, but they're about a week before Christmas, the New Year, and about a week afterwards. So we do get a 2-week period, and traditionally the period over the summer, January, late December, is relatively quiet because of people going on holiday. However, I wouldn't be surprised in these times that volume still keeps coming through at record levels. One issue that is emerging, John, and I might just mention here, is a material supply issue in terms of both actual people to do the building and materials, pink bats, for instance, trusses and the like. There is a real shortage of that stuff. So there's a natural slowing in terms of not only our own ability to get the applications out the door, but then finding a builder and finding the materials to actually do the work is also challenging.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. You're no doubt about it. My experience with the marketplace, the quotes last about a week. Trusses and things are about months and months behind. Materials are very scarce, and I cannot see that situation improving for anybody who's intending to build. It's a lot more of a challenging process than it ever was. Thank you very much for that, Tim. Now, does anybody have any other? Bill, you want to talk about the Sheffield Hall? Please go and talk there, or nobody else can hear. The subject is the burning of the Sheffield Hotel and what the future might hold for that community, and having a suitable facility, which appears that it's going to be a challenge to replace that building. And there has been some discussion around whether the community might be able to fill the bill in the future. Over to you, Bill.
Right, I'm ready. I can talk now, can I? Yep. Well, the hotel wasn't burned down, but it was gutted. And there's a bit of a problem with it. First of all, it's underinsured. Secondly, historic places have indicated that they want to rebuild, and that could take millions of dollars and up to 5 years to actually do it. There's nowhere else available for a temporary accommodation for a hotel. We've got a hall there which would suit the purpose.
Could I suggest you use the word bar or tavern, Bill, not the word hotel?
Sorry?
Hotel would tend to indicate that you need accommodation, which I'm sure you don't.
Yeah.
It's about a tavern or a bar, surely, that you're looking to replace.
But to be a tavern or a hotel, you still have to provide food. So it has to have a restaurant.
Any licensed facility will provide food. Cafe, whatever.
Yeah.
So it has to have a registered.
Yeah, but if the Historic Places Trust and it's a heritage building want it restored, there's got to be some really, really good arguments against it. Right? And but the hotel, you know, there's nowhere for people to go. We don't even have a shop apart from the pie shop in Sheffield. There's no other place for people to congregate and what have you. And so the indications are that we could use the hotel, use the hall, because it has the facilities available for that we could use it as a hotel, plus still use it as a Sheffield hall. Not that that's a hang of a lot of use, because since the council have taken it over, the hall's been used once in 12 months. And that was the only reason it was used by private people, was the fact that they got the accommodation fee for it at the old price. And it's been used a few times, but they're council sponsored things. And so the indications are that we could use the hall in the meantime for supplementing a hotel. And it's been suggested to Douglas Marshall, and he is not opposed to it. In fact, he thinks it's not a bad idea. It would save a problem, because Springfield and Sheffield have got a problem at the moment of two halls, and they having to decide which one they should keep. And Springfield is a far better hall than Sheffield, and so it makes the choice a lot easier. We have no caretaker or administrator or anything of that nature in Sheffield. We did have one for a few months, but they've left, and it's been unattended for quite some time. So the hall itself doesn't actually function, although it was used for Double Gold Star not so long ago, about 3 weeks ago, for the Sheffield Fire Brigade. But again, that was sponsored by the Selwyn Council. But they could still be held, because the main hall and the rest of that part of it would remain open. It's only the supper room and the kitchen and some other space at the back which may have to be accommodated by porta potties, which would allow the hotel to function. And I think it's very important that we do something along those lines. And the reason that I brought it up was to see if we can get some support from the community board to the council to okay the use of the hall for a for the hotel purposes. And but everywhere you look, it has advantages which nothing else can take its place at the moment. And the people of Sheffield really need some sort of community. Of course, not forgetting Waddington and Annett, they're both environs of Sheffield anyway. Or Russell's Flat, there's a lot of Sheffield as well. So it's just a matter of, I thought I'd bring it up, because I had actually broached Douglas Marshall, and as I say, he's not adverse to at the moment anyway.
Could I?
Thank you for that general background, Judith.
Could I say that the person who needs to not be adverse to it is actually the licence holder? We go nowhere without a licence holder, and that person or his supporters need to put up a business proposal, a very full business proposal of what would be needed to bring the hall up to standard and the kitchen up to standard. And it would need to include things like hours they proposed to be open, staff, and all of those things. So unless the licence holder is prepared to support the proposal, it's not going to go anywhere. And we would need a business proposal. But other than that, I don't see anything wrong with the proposal. I think it would be a good solution for the community. But we need to see a business proposal.
Okay, I'm going to thank you, Bill, for your background information. And I think we all can see the problem, and we all would like to see that community find a solution. This may be one of the possible solutions. There may be other solutions, and obviously we want to encourage a solution for the well-being and the wellness of that community. So I think we will watch the space and see how it develops. There's nothing for the board to actually deny support or be negative about, which we're not. And we'll wait and see. No doubt you're obviously involved in some capacity, so we'll wait to see how things develop. All good.
All of that would be done. But most importantly, it can't be run by the council. Because the council has policies. The council has policies regarding alcohol. And so it would have to be completely divorced from the council. And it still has to fit within, as Judith has rightly said, Licensing Commission, all of those health regulations and all the rest of it. We understand, and that was fully discussed. But as I say, that even the chance of applying for a temporary accommodation and a temporary license has even been discussed, and that can be done quite easily, provided all of the other regulations are complied with. So we know that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Judith. I'm going to wrap the meeting up unless anybody's got any other issues they want to bring up. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for your involvement. I think it would be fair to say to all of us, I think we would have been just as well to stay at home and had our own computers at home, and coming here to the library, which was a call that I made, I think was a complete waste of time, quite frankly. Well, learning experience, but I wouldn't be recommending it again. I'd be staying at home, quite frankly, and connecting individually. Yes, Judith.
Has Stephen got anything to say?
Well, can I just say that in terms of bringing our computers here, there is no reason why this shouldn't work. And I think we need to say, council, that the technology in this room needs to be improved. We should be able to sit here, each with our computers, and work with them. And there's no reason. We need to have the computer technology here checked. Please, Tim.
I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who sat there very quietly, and give him the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, there were some issues clearly with the setup today. There is a very easy, workable solution for you for some of the group to meet together at the Darfield Service Centre, if that was your wish. We weren't able to get that set up today, but we could have a group of you meeting there with using a webcam setup. The problem today was that we had 3 different laptops all working in the same room. That meant that at times there were 3 microphones open and there were 3 different speakers or 3 different sound sources. So that's what was causing all of the echo and the feedback within the room. So the way around that is to have a single setup, the way we would do in a video conference room. So with everybody around the table, but with a webcam, and using the large screen probably to set the Zoom meeting up. So if that was an option that the committee wanted to pursue in the future, we'd work with our IT team to get that set up in a way that it would be certainly more successful than it has been today.
Can I just say that on the 9th, I ran the Air Force Association's annual general meeting, and it was absolutely superb the way it went through. And I agree 100% with you, Stephen. Cheers.
Okay, that's all right. Stephen, I just said we would like to have our November meeting at the library, please.
Okay, I will work with Therese to ensure that that's set up for you. Yep.
Well, it gives us the advantage of both publicly having the meeting, but also then we can have appropriately managed right regulations. We can have a little bit of a workshop or something as a board before or after, which would be quite helpful. Okay, Stephen? Don't think my computer's working properly. Could you?
Yep, that's fine.
Now, I will now thank you all for your attendance, for what it was, and I will declare the meeting closed, and I will talk to you tomorrow, Therese, about a few things that were talked about on the agenda, all right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Therese.
All right. Yep. Leaving.